The Voynich Manuscript is a medieval document, likely originating in the early 15th century. Written is an unknown and undeciphered script. It's named after Wilfrid Voynich, who purchased it in 1912 from a Jesuit college in Italy. The manuscript is divided into several sections based on illustrations: botanical, astronomical, biological, pharmaceutical, and cosmological. While the precise origin is not known, it did come from Voynich's possession in Italy, where it was part of a library collection. What makes this so interesting is the fact that it has unreadable text. Despite efforts by linguists, geographers, and computer scientists, even AI, the Voynich script remains undeciphered. This mystery has captivated scholars and amateur sleuths alike. The manuscript's content seems to blend science, medicine, astrology, and perhaps the occult, suggesting a knowledge or perspective not found in any known historical text. It truly is just a historical whodunit. It's a journey through history involving figures like Emperor Rudolph II, which adds layers of intrigue just by itself. Who wrote it? From who? What knowledge does it hold? Completely undeciphered. The illustrations are not only enigmatic, but also beautifully executed, combining medieval art with scientific observation in a way that's both familiar and alien. The Voynich manuscript isn't just an artifact. It's a challenge to our understanding of history, language, and human knowledge. As soon as I started looking at it, it is so interesting. Even for the fact, if it is just a complete hoax, the fact that someone in the 1400s would do a hoax like that, and it's 2024 now and it has people still looking at this thing, that's truly interesting to me. The Voynich manuscript has inspired numerous theories due to its undeciphered text and peculiar illustrations. Here's some of them that probably you may have seen if you're watching this and you've just looked at the topic before. It's just a hoax or complete gibberish, designed to look like a coded message but with no real content. Gordon Rugg proposed that using a simple grid-based cipher like a cardon grill combined with meaningless words, one could produce text similar to that in the manuscript. Arguments against this would be critics of the theory point out that the manuscript's complexity, especially in terms of its statistical linguistic properties, would be extraordinarily difficult to fake in a pre-computer era, suggesting it's more than just a random text. Another theory that could tie into, Graham Hancock's Lost Civilization is that the manuscript could be written in a natural language that has either been lost or is in an unknown script. Some researchers like Stephen Bax have attempted to identify words suggesting connections to Semitic or Indo-European languages. The theory postulates that the script might represent an ancient or medieval language not preserved in other records, or even a constructed language for esoteric or alchemical purposes. Piggybacking off that and just thinking about Graham Hancock's theory, and other people's theory, that there is just a lost civilization, that, there's this network of people who may have transferred information. This manuscript is something that would tie in directly to that, I would assume. I'm sure people have made videos on Graham Hancock and the Voynich manuscript, but if there was ever some sort of text from his thought, this would be like something to point to. Another theory is that the manuscript is a cipher or code. It contains encoded information, possibly about alchemy, science, or the occult. Various forms of ciphers have been proposed, from simple substitution to more complex systems. Decryption attempts include those by William Friedman, who suggested it might be an attempt at universal language or code. However, no decipherment has been universally accepted. Another theory is it's a herbal manuscript. Given its extensive botanical illustrations, some believe the Voynich manuscript might have been a guide to plants, possibly medicinal or magical. If you look through the pages, it does seem a little occulty, but it seems it's all women. Then at the end you see men. I have no idea, but I've seen some theories also suggest this is a woman's health book. All right, so now I'm going to do my best Criminal Minds profile on this person. I believe that this medieval document could potentially be explained through the lens of a creator who suffered from schizophrenia. A theory that's going to merge historical context with modern psychological understanding. During the 15th century, literacy rates were low, particularly among common folk. However, the manuscript's creator would likely have been an exception, possibly from wealthy or scholarly background where education was more accessible. The individual might have been a scribe, alchemist, or perhaps a noble with access to extensive libraries, suggesting not only literacy was deep, but the disorganization and just the incoherentness of the manuscript itself, because it's beautiful. It looks like real writing. The pictures are beautiful, but it's complete madness. So the mental decline in schizophrenia. Imagine a scenario where this person begins his life with great promise, perhaps studying at one of the early universities or within a monastery. Initially obsessed with alchemy, botany, and astrology, starts experiencing cognitive symptoms around middle age. The onset of schizophrenia could be marked by disorganized thinking, delusions, hallucinations. These symptoms might manifest in belief system where he's decoding the secrets of the universe, leading to the creation of the manuscript. If you think of all the philosophers and all the new ideas and the Enlightenment coming in this time, and prior to it, I guess, more so than the 1400s, but, just thinking of all the philosophers that someone of stature may be reading, what would happen if they had some sort of mental decline? What would they be thinking? You ever have a dream about the last thing you were thinking about before you fell asleep? The period was a time where herbal remedies and alchemical experiments and trial and error, including substances that could induce and exacerbate psychotic symptoms, he might have used these in a quest for knowledge, inadvertently worsening his condition. Or, maybe he was dealing with with other types of ailments, and all this trial and error caused the deterioration or the jump to schizophrenia. The manuscript sections could represent his attempts to encode his fragmented worldview. The botanical illustrations might be attempts to document the perceived botanical language where plants communicate secrets only he can decode due to his enlightened state. The language itself is undecipherable text, and it might not be a cipher in a traditional sense, but rather a reflection of the schizophrenia, where the language loses conventional meaning, becoming personalized to the point where it's just what it is. No one can decipher it. Given the manuscript's materials and the time required for such work, wealth could afford him the leisure, could indulge in his obsessions without immediate societal constraint. His wealth might have also allowed isolation, a known factor in the progression of untreated schizophrenia, where he could work undisturbed on this manuscript. An educated background would explain the manuscript's complexity, combining elements of known sciences with personal delusions. His education might have been his initial path, but also his eventual prison as his mind deteriorated. So just looking at schizophrenia now, back in medieval Europe, the mentally ill, including those that may have symptoms like schizophrenia, were often seen as possessed by demons or witches, leading to treatments that were more spiritual or punitive than therapeutic. So thinking about this rich family, hypothetically, that had a child that mind started to deteriorate, if you think of just lobotomies, how recent that was, who knows what was going on in medieval Europe with just the urge and need to try to find a cure for someone. In the late 19th century, the term dementia praecox was introduced, and it was Emil Kraepelin who refined this into diagnostic category in 1893. Kraepelin described it as a progressive mental disorder leading to intellectual deterioration. In 1911, Eugene Bleuler coined the term schizophrenia, derived from the Greek words meaning split mind, to describe the fragmentation of thought process rather than split personality, which is a common misconception. The symptoms outlined as 4A's were affect, autism, ambivalence, and associations. If you want to really jump back, when considering what Aristotle and Plato might have thought about the condition like schizophrenia, they were engaging in speculative interpretation based on their philosophical frameworks rather than any direct comments that they made about the term schizophrenia or what might they have saw, like what the equivalent was then than it is now. When I was looking, Plato discusses theomania, it's divine madness, in his work Phaedrus. I've never read that. That's just where it came from. This suggests 4 types of divine madness: prophetic, ritual, poetic, and erotic. They're not equated to mental disorders. One might infer Plato's view on what could resemble schizophrenia might align with a form of divine possession or insight, especially if the individual appeared to have visions or heard voices that could be interpreted as divine messages. Another thing I came across was a tripartite soul. Plato's concept of the soul divided into reason, spirit, and appetite might see schizophrenia as an imbalance or disharmony among these parts. For instance, if reason, the rational part, is overwhelmed by the other parts, particularly the spirit part, which could relate to passions or emotions, this might resemble some symptoms of schizophrenia where irrational thoughts dominate. Plato's Republic, he discusses how justice in the soul and state mirrors each other. If the soul's parts are not in harmony, leading to behaviors out of the ordinary like hallucinations, Plato might see this as a failure in achieving personal and societal harmony. Not necessarily an illness, but as spiritual and more of a misalignment. As far as Aristotle goes, clearly his theory of the soul as the form of the body might see schizophrenia as a disorder where the form, the psyche, misaligns with the matter, the body. This misalignment could be understood in terms of imbalance between potentiality and actuality, where for the potential of rational thought fails to actualize properly. So I think an important question to ask in this is it actually real? Like all these like theories and thoughts, the carbon dating results of the manuscript would suggest it actually is real. The dating was done in 2009. The results indicated with 95% probability that the animal skin used for the paper that it was written on dates to 1404 and between 1438. This dating was done part of an Austrian broadcasting TV documentary, and the findings were announced during a press conference in December 8th, 2009. The dating was performed on small samples from several pages of the manuscript. The methods helped in dating organic materials by measuring the decay of carbon-14, a naturally occurring isotope. The process involves comparing the amount of carbon-14 in the sample to known decay rates. The dating provided a range due to the statistical nature and radiocarbon dating, which includes a level of uncertainty but confirms the manuscript's physical material originates from the early 15th century. I think it'd just be really far-fetched for someone to acquire that much paper in recent times and then jot it down like later on, if it was a hoax in that sense. The cool thing would be if this was some dude in the 1400s that just like, you know what, in 2024, they're still going to be wondering about this. And he truly made it like that. So I really don't want to get into too much of the timeline. It really is like a long list of just, and there's a big gap of time where the book goes unknown, where they thought it was just in a college or I don't know. There's a lot of different theories, and I don't want to speculate on it because that would take a long time in this video, and I don't want it to be an overly long video. But the one thing I do want to touch on, there was a guy in this story, Johannes Marcus Marci. He wrote a letter talking about Emperor Rudolph II, and he claims that he paid 100 ducat for it. The ducat is basically just gold in the time. You know, the buying power of 100 would be a lot, but I've seen this theory actually it can be interpreted as up to 600. So you have an emperor buying a manuscript for a large amount of buying power at the time. You know, obviously he had money he could spend, but he would buy things that had cultural meaning. There's other things this guy's known for, like acquiring over time, the little bit I was reading on him. But, you know, he wrote a letter in 1665 to 1666, which accompanied the Voynich Manuscript. In the letter, Marcy discusses the manuscript and mentioned that it was once owned by Emperor Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor. Rudolph II, he was known for his interest in the occult, alchemy, and the arts, making his court of Prague a center for scholars, artists, and mystics at the time. His fascination with esoteric knowledge aligns with the kind of manuscript the Voynich represents. Claims regarding the 100 ducats. The letter by Marcy, however, does not explicitly mention Rudolph paying 100 ducats for the Voynich manuscript. Instead, the narrative around Rudolph II's acquisition of the manuscript often involves a much higher sum of 600 ducats. This amount, considering the purchasing power at the time, would be massive, like just to the most common person. All right, so I would love to hear your guys' theories on this, any corrections that you guys might have for me. And again, I would so appreciate if you guys hit subscribe, like. It would help me out a ton in the algorithm. This is something I genuinely love doing. So likes or not, it's not going to deter me from doing more. But I do appreciate everybody who is, interacting, and, it makes it a lot more fun. So again, comment. What do you think? What's your theory on this? Let me know. And if you guys have any ideas for new videos or things you want me to cover, please comment that as well. Have a good one.